Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this tutorial we are going to build a custom autocomplete component in React. This is the finished application and we are going to get suggestions as we start typing. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So here I am in VS Code. And as you can see, I have this application. I have created this one with create React app. So what I did, I came here in the terminal and run npx create React app and then the name of the app. So you can go ahead and do the same. You want to make sure you have Node installed on your machine for this to work. And then what I did after, I started the server. And as you can see, my application is on a local host. And as you can see here, we have the application, and here we are returning a div with a class name of container. And inside here, we have this hello text. And I am also importing the styles. And here in the styles, we have just these basic styles for our application. I am using Flexbox to center everything in the middle. And I am also changing the font family of the application. This div with a class name of container has I'm giving it a maximum width. I am also specifying the margin to the top, and if I open this in the browser, as you can see, we only have this text. I assume you know how to create a React project using create React app. Okay, so now let's go back in VS Code and start writing the logic of our application. Here I am going to create a folder for components. This is where we are going to have the autocomplete component. And in here I am going to implement a basic component using functional components. I'm going to use a null function. For now, I want to return a div with a class name of container. And here, I just want to have an input. This is going to have a placeholder. Search. In this component, I want to be able to use the state, so I'm going to import the useState hook from React. I want to come here and export this component as the default export. And I want to come back in the app.js and import this component. And instead of returning this text, I'm going to return this component. Here, this autocomplete component is going to take options. These are going to be our suggestions. I mean, from these options, it's where we are going to get suggestions according to the user input. I am going to use state for the value. So I am gonna come here and create a state for value. By default, this is going to be an empty string. And here the value is going to be this value. and I want to have a function to control the change of the state of this input. I'm gonna come here and write handle change. Okay, let me create this function. This is going to be handle change. This is going to take in the event as an argument, and with this event we can update the value. The way we do this by doing event.target.value. I also want to have one more state for the show suggestions. This will tell us whether to show suggestions or not. Set show suggestions. By default, this is going to be false. Here for this option prop, by default I am going to set an array of fruits. For example, we can have oranges, but just an array of fruits. I want to declare a variable for suggestions, and for now the suggestions are going to be the same as the options. And in here down below the input field, I am going to display these suggestions, but to display them I will make sure that the show suggestion state is set to true. So I'm gonna come here and do suggestions, and if this is true I am going to display them. I will use an ordered list with a class name of suggestions, and in here I am going to use the map function to display these suggestions. Going to get a suggestion, and I am going to return a list item with a key of suggestion. I want to show suggestions when the user starts typing in this input, and the way I am going to do this, I am going to come here in the input field and use the onFocus prop, and this is going to take in a function. I will use an anonymous arrow function, and here I am going to set the show suggestions to true. If I go back in the browser and refresh, as you can see, if I focus on this user input, I am going to see the suggestions. For now, when I type, we won't see any change, and actually I want to go and implement the functionality so that when we start searching we can see suggestions according to the user input. And here for the suggestions, we are setting suggestions to these options, and instead what I want to do now is to filter these options according to the user input. And the way I am going to do this, I am going to use the filter function. We are going to get the option and make this option lowercase, and I am going to check if in this option we have the value. I also want to make the value a lowercase. So by doing this, by changing this to lowercase, our suggestions won't be case sensitive. So if I go back in the browser, so like if I start typing, you can see that I am seeing suggestions according to user input. Before I move further, I want to come here in the styles and implement some stylings for the autocomplete component. It has a class name of autocomplete. I'm going to give it for a maximum width of 500 pixels, and I am also going to give it a border 1 pixel solid. I'll give it a color. This is a light color, and I am also going to give it a border radius of 10 pixels. And down here I want to style the input in the autocomplete component. It is going to have a width of 100%, and I also want to remove the border, so I will set the border to none, and I will also set the margin. I will set the margin to 10 pixels on the top and on the bottom, and I will also set to 0 for the right and the left. And finally, I am going to have the font size. The font size, I want it to be 16 pixels. Okay, I also want to have a padding of 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 0, and then 10 pixels. Okay, here in the autocomplete, this div is not supposed to have a class name of container. Instead, it is supposed to have a class name of autocomplete. I want to continue with the styles, and for the input field, when I focus, I want to remove the outline, so I will set the outline to none. And now I do want to style the suggestions. I don't want to have list style, and I want to set the margin and the padding to 0. I'm going to use the same border I used for the autocomplete, so I'm gonna go ahead and copy this and come here and paste it here. And finally, I'm gonna have a background color. I will set this to a lighter color, and then the border radius, and in these suggestions, I want to style the list items. I also want to remove the styles, and I also want to set the padding to 10 pixels, and also want to set the cursor to pointer. And finally, when I hover the suggestion, I want to have the background color. I'm going to use the same color I used for the border. Okay, instead of using the maximum width, I'm going to use the width, which is equal to 500 pixels, and this will look bigger. When I click on one of these suggestions, I want the input to be set to the suggestion I click. I'm going to use the onClick prop. This is going to be a function, and this is going to be handle suggestion click. I will create this function. This function is going to take the suggestion as the argument, And with this suggestion, I am going to set the value to this suggestion, and I also want to hide the suggestions, so I'll do set suggestions false. This should be an arrow function because I want to pass in this suggestion. Let's come back in the browser and see what we have. When I click on one of these suggestions, I should see the input field changing, and this is working as expected. Okay, so now instead of using these options, I want to go back in app.js. Here I have a list of cities, I mean the name of cities, and instead of using those fruits as option, I'm gonna come here and use these cities for options. And the way you can do this is by passing the option props. It's going to be city names. So if I come back in the browser and refresh, I can search for any cities here, and I will see options here. The last thing I want to have is when I come here and click outside of this component, I want these suggestions to be hidden. And to do this, I am going to add an event listener to this document and listen for the click event. To do this, I am going to import two more hooks from React. The first one is going to be the useEffect, and the other one is going to be the useRef hook. And with the useEffect hook, we can add the event to the document when the component renders. I also want to select this div, so when I click, I want to make sure I am clicking outside of this div. I am going to use the ref, and I'm going to use autocomplete ref, and I want to come here and create this autocomplete ref with the useRef hook we imported. Here I want to add an event to the document. This is going to be the click event, and I am going to use the handle outside click function. I will create this in a second, and for the return of this function, I'm going to remove this event from the document. So this function we are returning will learn when this component is removed from the DOM, so we don't need to have this event listener anymore once the component is not rendered in the DOM. And I'm gonna come here on the top and create this function. This is going to take in the event as the argument. And here I want to check if I have an element for the autocomplete div. And the way I'm going to do this is by checking if I have the current element for the ref. And if I have it, I am also going to check if the autocomplete, and I am also going to make sure that I am not clicking on the autocomplete div. And the way I'm going to do this is by checking if the current element does not contain the event.target And if not, I am going to hide the suggestions by calling this set show suggestions function. Let's test if this is working. And as you can see, it is working as expected. Alright guys, that's all for this video. I hope you learned something. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.